All the fire blasts and fogs of chaos magic eventually drew other newmates to the area, who in turn called for guards. I found out what happened later from Suma, as I passed out and stayed out for a solid 24 hours. Suma spent some time healing my wounds while I was out, and she was interrogated as well. I later learned that Suma consented on my behalf for them to perform another memory delve on me. With that, they were able to get the evidence needed to arrest the 2 former lesser nobles, as well as the now former magistrate. His noble title was stripped from him and given to the next in line in his family, his oldest son. I heard a rumour that he tried to kill himself, but it was never confirmed. When I did wake up, I was starving and sore, but all my burns had healed and only a bit of stiffness remained in my elbow. Suma had been tended to as well. The blow from that white cat familiar broke one of her wings and legs, but she was up and about by the time I was awake again. I also apparently continued to emit that fog of magical energy for another hour after losing consciousness, and it didn't disperse for nearly 6 hours. They actually had to remove everyone from the area because all their spells kept getting inverted. "I heard you finally woke up," Investigator Dahal said, flying into the room I was in. "How are you doing?" "Better," I said, and took a big bite of something called magiopa. "My arm is a bit sore though," I said with a full mouth. "You sure have a knack for getting yourself into trouble, it seems, but everything has been sorted out, so I don't think you have much to worry about from the former magistrate's family," Dahal said. "I suppose that's a relief," I said after swallowing. "Oh, and you have a visitor," he said. "Suma?" I asked. "Not exactly," he said. Meanwhile, another nymph, much larger and well-decorated, flew in. "Hello, Jake," he said. "My name is Undunka Sopra, and I am the Grand Duke of the Royal Citadel and the country of Ambos. It is nice to meet you." Magistrate kills POV. "Do you remember what the worst day of your life is?" "I do. It was when a city guard showed up at my home and told me that my son, my youngest child, had been murdered by some low-class wretch. I had many favours owed to me as an influential member of noble society, and I called on as many as I needed to find out who did it. I found out that there were 2 witnesses, lesser nobles who had their titles stripped from them after the fact, a mockery of the highest order. I had them brought to me, and they told me everything. They told me who killed my son, and they told me how he died, in agony. There is no greater sorrow than the fury of a parent mourning, and likewise no greater rage can be kindled than a parent who seeks vengeance. I spent countless gold pieces and emptied storehouses full of mana reserves to purchase a pre-prepared ritual that can stop a familiar from being summoned. It was so expensive because a ritual of that nature is illegal by royal decree, but I didn't care. Not then and not now. If I had to empty every storehouse in Ambos to kill that familiar and his master, then I would. The ritual was stored in a jewel, and when I wanted to activate it, then all I had to do was input some mana. I planned my trap. First myself and the 2 now defunct nobles would corner the familiar after his master had left it alone. Then one of them would send out their salamander familiar so as to probe the familiar's strength. If the salamander proves ineffective, I'll utilize the ritual after summoning my own personal familiar, Agos, a lesser dragon species called a drake. A few days later. The familiar proved stronger than predicted. He was not immediately killed by Agos, and was even able to contact his master in an attempt to flee. They made it outside the effective area of the ritual, but it didn't matter, as the master had been neutralized already. There was no escape anymore. The familiar was at his end now, attempting to radiate magic in a desperate attempt to save his life and the life of his master. Agos would make quick work of him, but I wanted him to suffer like my son did. I would make his last moment on Atmosia one of torment, and I would do it with my own hand. At least, that's what I thought, as I brought down as large a ball of fire as I could muster onto the vermin's head. For a moment, I felt peace, justice, and joy at having avenged my son, but that was all stolen by that thing once more. It emerged from the flames unscathed, and it only spoke a single soul-crushing word to me. It told me to run. I don't know if it was out of defiance or sorrow, but I did not run. I stayed. Part of me wanted to die. Another, much larger part of me wanted something I knew I would never have. My son back in my embrace. And vengeance. Investigator Dahal's POV. Dahal, we have reports of nobles fighting just outside the town. One of the guards under my command said after barging in. Again? I replied, annoyed. I stood up from my resting perch and followed him to the area. To my surprise, the people involved were faces I had seen before. Suma, and her familiar sentinel, or Jake. When I arrived, Suma was being tended to by a healer for a broken wing and leg, and Jake was unconscious and radiating some form of blue magical energy. I tried to enter it, but was warned away. Apparently magic doesn't work right inside the field, and they had to move everyone away from Jake, so they could cast healing and other types of magic to investigate the area. Suma, I called out to her. What happened? 3 noblemen attacked us. I was knocked unconscious, but Jake defended me, Suma explained. I looked over at Jake, through the thick fog of energy, and saw him laying on the ground. I went closer and spotted what appeared to be the dismembered corpse of a drake. Jake did that? I whispered to myself. It took a while, but Jake did eventually stop producing that energy, and we were able to recover him from the fog. We had to drag him out by his feet with our borogs and perform healing on him afterwards, but we managed it. He didn't wake up for a full day. Honestly, I thought he was going to die, but he was strong and recovered. While he was asleep, Suma gave us permission to do a memory delve for some answers, and we found a lot more than we bargained for. Jake was dreaming when the delve was performed, and our memory mage found out the hard way what he was dreaming of. Apparently he was dreaming of the battle in which Jake had been burned, stabbed at, nearly crushed and beaten, but still kept fighting. He managed to kill a drake, take a full force blast of flames without damage, and protect his master all before finally losing consciousness. Our mage had to repeatedly stop to get her bearings, or to stop crying. By the time it was over, all our devil would say was, Vikings.